And here is Ben Corkery. Hello, Ben. It's lovely to have you on my show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm doing well.
And where are you today? It looks very holiday-ish where you are.
It's I'm in Canada, and we are having a beautiful September here. So there's lots of sun. It's still fairly warm, and it is it's a beautiful day here. I'm near just north of Toronto.
So you're Canadian, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Oh, lovely. And so, Ben, again, it's so lovely to have you on my show because, as you know, that my show is about people who have undergone adversities, who have overcome them and are now victors of their lives, which is exactly what you are, would you say?
Yep. Yep. I'm uh I'm a victor and a victor in progress still though as well. So
That's good. Yeah.
I guess we
Hey.
all are.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey. We are constantly growing and constantly healing. And I think if for anybody to say that they're healed, I feel that maybe they need to reevaluate that because life throws challenges at you, through every part of your life, through your family, your professional life, through, your wealth, your health. And, you have to be resilient. You have to have that strength inside of you to overcome a lot of these challenges that life throws at you. And you can either shrivel up and just think that the life's against you, or you can be victorious and you can go out there and you can fight, thrive, and just live the best life that you possibly can, right? So it'd be really good
Mm-hmm.
to hear about yourself, Ben, where you've come from and the challenges that you've had to overcome in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just open by saying that I was looking over some of your podcasts and some of the amazing stories that you've had on, and obviously, something like trauma can be in so many different ways. So I think first off, it's just important to realize that uh, everyone has their own unique traumas, and everyone really only has their own experience. So uh, you can't always compare because it's all relative at some level. So with
Mhm.
that being said, my story is more of a um well, I'll focus more on just kind of the anxiety and the kind of the situation I ended up in, and not because of any specific trauma that I can point to. So maybe some of the listeners can relate to this. I know sometimes it can almost be frustrating if you can't point to a specific reason or trauma and say that put me in this spot, and now um, I can kind of figure out why that happened.
Mhm.
So with that being said, I didn't really feel like I was struggling or a kind of a victim in any sense. Even though I was kind of an anxious kid growing up, I had very kind of anxious tendencies, and yeah, once again, just didn't have too much to compare that to. So until I was in, I think, university my first year, I just moved away from home. A lot of big changes there, new people, new places, time management, all those things. It wasn't until that time that some of this really started to kind of overwhelm me, and I started uh, to struggle with it, for it to become an obstacle where I felt like it was kind of just impeding things I wanted to do, and kind of how I wanted to live. So I'm 28 now, and that was, I think I was about 18 when I kind of remember. I really remember it was a slower process, but I do remember going to bed when I just feeling overwhelmed and like this. I don't think this is quite right. Not being able to think clearly, and feeling overwhelmed, and like a lot of us, I think I just kind of swept it under the rug for a few years. I was able to cope at some level, on my own, and even though I was kind of having fairly high anxiety, and I felt like I might be kind of mildly kind of depressed. I didn't really know what to do about it at that time. And it wasn't till maybe towards the end of my years in university that I started to just even read about things, listen to podcasts, kind of just try to figure out what was going on, which was a great start. But it was also around the end of my degree, so about 4 years later, that I kind of experienced my first panic attack, which when you don't know what that is, it's a very scary kind of experience. And at the time, I was just sorting out some things in my own life. I had a few kind of sort of rocky relationships that I think contributed to feeling a little out of control. And then when I was kind of just blindsided by that experience of, a panic attack, not really knowing what it was, I kind of assumed that it must mean that there was something very seriously wrong, which at some level there was, but on another level, I really didn't understand how our body can react when we are in kind of a state of alarm, a state of fight or flight. So I kind of had a few years of kind of maybe building this up, not dealing with some issues, and honestly not living the healthiest lifestyle, kind of coping through just distraction and drinking, and really not addressing it, trying to dance around it. And I think that all contributing, able to when a problem did arise that kind of alarmed me, not being able to totally confront that. And I think that's maybe what led to kind of experiencing those panic attacks, off the bat. And that, for anyone who's been through one of those, I mean, it's just, it sounds kind of, we talk about it, or we say, almost in a cliche kind of way, that, we experience that. But when you do, and you really know, like, it's a very terrifying experience. It's a very alarming kind of experience, and it can really, it can really kind of stop you in your tracks. It can paralyze you, and it can really get you stuck. So that's kind of where I ended up at the end of university, just trying to navigate some of this. And once again, thinking that, what did I kind of miss? Something must have gone terribly wrong for me to be feeling this way, but not really being able to point to some, trauma or issue, which I think, can be confusing, and can also be a little bit of a trap sometimes to try to, I know for me, trying to figure out the reason was not so much the thing that set me on a path of healing. It was part of it. But for me, kind of understanding how our bodies work, how the different factors in our life contribute to our stress levels at kind of all these different levels, whether it's social, physical, emotional, spiritual. There's all these different levels, and when there's signals of alarm coming through at those different levels, that can culminate in these symptoms of mental illness, really. And so towards the end of my university, I just found myself in that kind of stuck position, experiencing kind of this high level anxiety kind of all the time, not really knowing what to do with it, and experiencing these panic attacks as well, and just kind of a rough year, trying to navigate a rough couple of years, navigate career and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what led into it, and then I can get into kind of unwinding some of that, but I'm not sure if you have anything to add in.
Yeah, for sure. So I just wanted to know, because panic attacks, it is linked to obviously anxiety. And I don't know, has there been research which has linked it to anything that may have happened in your childhood? Because a lot of the conditions that we suffer as adults do tend to be due to something that might have triggered it from early childhood. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, super interesting. And one thing that I was able to kind of connect a little bit is that the same kind of experience of that fear or anxiety had definitely been kind of present at times in my childhood, though for different reasons. So I did make that connection later on. But as far as finding out why that was there, I did explore that, and even talking to some, some therapists around that topic, and trying to figure out what might have gone on, and that shed some light on it, in terms of, I think, really understanding myself, understanding how internalizing certain things, or becoming those patterns that you talked about. If you have an experience of being afraid, or having a reason to be afraid, even if it's a small thing. I used to get very very high anxiety at sleepovers from when I was about 12 years old, and once again, I'm not sure why that would happen, but it was almost that. It was funny because 10 years later, it was that same fear that came up as a young adult, and that was very kind of, I thought I'd kind of dealt with that, and this isn't about being away from home now so much as I just had that feeling of fear. So I mean, you can get into definitely the kind of the whether it's the fear of abandonment, or being alone, or why maybe you can't manage on your own. So I definitely looked into some of those things, and they all, I would say, informed me and helped me to understand what can lead to some of these feelings, but didn't necessarily point me about how to get out of it.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And do you find as well, because we know that it is mainly the male population who struggle with depression and suppression, the fact that they're not able to communicate feelings, which then leads to them suffering in silence, and that's why there's a lot of cases of suicide as well. So again, do you think that there's a link between that? Suppression, depression, suicide?
I would definitely say so, and even as I look back into kind of teen years and my earlier 20s, that was definitely a piece of it. On the one hand, you've got whether or not you are okay to just experience different emotions as strong as they might be. I think we can definitely learn in certain ways from our upbringings that certain feelings are simply unacceptable, and if we start to think that way and to treat them that way, that is going to cause problems. So that's the one level. But then you've got the next level of once I have this kind of problem, or I know I'm kind of struggling with feeling some of these different things, the next level is, can you even talk about that, or can you get help with that? Is that kind of okay to do, which is a tough thing. I mean, like I said, I didn't really talk to anyone about this for maybe 3 or 4 years, and there's definitely that you hold back.
Hold it in. Yeah, this is it. And that's by holding it in, that's what is going to kill us eventually. And that's linked to obviously the trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder that a lot of survivors experience at a later age. So I think it's amazing that you finally did speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And do you find that it was the fact that you had a supportive partner, as in your therapist, somebody who understood you? Do you think that was what you needed in order for you to get out of your depression?
So there's kind of a little story there about just what was the catalyst for kind of getting some help and starting to make changes, and starting to realize that it was something I really should prioritize and not kind of try to hide from. And that was actually a physical injury that I underwent in my last year of university. And kind of long story short, I was walking home late from a party with some friends, and my friend who was walking ahead of us was approached by some people who were trying to steal his backpack. We ran up to kind of help, and long story short, I got punched in the face. I got knocked out. The last thing I remember is just kind of approaching to help, and then kind of getting knocked out, and I woke up in the ambulance, and I suffered a concussion. So I guess talking about trauma, there's a little bit there, but
There you go, yeah.
but dealing with yeah. But what that kind of did for me was I was at a fairly small university, and the sense of the community and the support and the help from the dean. I mean, kind of everybody heard about it, and so I had to get extensions and miss exams with this concussion for I was off for a week, just off of school, and what I started to think about was how, you know, it's amazing the support and how much help I'm getting with this kind of, you know, physical injury. You know, imagine if I could transition that over to kind of the, you know, the mental side of things. You know, how good would that be? So that really gave me the courage to say, even though I don't know where to start, I think I want to talk to someone about this, or try to get, you know, the right rest, the right help for the other side of things. So that was kind of what kind of started that journey. Yeah.
That's really brave. Well done, honestly. I salute you, because there's so many people in the world who don't even get to this stage in their lives where they feel like they need help. I think that's amazing at your age as well. Millennial, right?
Yeah.
A millennial seeking help. Amazing. You are, I think, you know, you are definitely an inspiration to many already. And wow, so you've come a long way since then, and it'll be amazing to hear about, you know, the holistic healing, which you're so passionate about, alternative education, and the creativity, personal responsibility you talk about. Wow, so go ahead.
Yeah, so that was kind of the kind of journey to trying to get some help, sort some of these problems out, and really confronting some of these things. But what I found over kind of another year of a lot of reading, even, you know, talking with family and some friends, with my doctor, with a therapist, which was, you know, very supportive, very helpful, learning some of the more kind of the cognitive behavioral therapy side of things, with just thoughts and how to navigate some of this stuff, to understand what might be going on from just kind of a coping point of view. And that was a great start, and that was helpful at some level. I was prescribed medications by my GP, and at the time that was something I was trying to explore, to figure out if that was a, you know, the right option. And I kind of wasn't sure. Awesome doctor, so I trusted him, but I did want to kind of explore things a little more before I kind of made that choice. And so what I kind of decided was, okay, you know, I've gotten this far and I'm doing the things with what they've recommended, but I feel like maybe there's more I could do, or more I could learn before going down the route of medication. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't. At that point, I was kind of in a good enough place where it wasn't an emergency intervention. It was kind of more a you know, making a plan for going forward, and so I started to explore things like meditation. I saw a talk at Google about meditation, and up until that point, you know, I didn't have the least interest in meditation, but this guy Dan Harris, and he now has actually a meditation app. It's called 10% Happier. But I heard his talk, and he talked about how he was a news anchor, and he had a panic attack on live television, and that was kind of his the catalyst for him starting to explore how meditation can help with anxiety. And he talked about how his lifestyle had kind of led him to this place where he wasn't, you know, living in a very healthy manner, and it culminated in this panic attack that he experienced on live television, and then started to use meditation, mindfulness meditation, to kind of unwind this. So I dove kind of headfirst into meditation. I started using an app called Headspace, and exploring podcasts and ideas. And I just started with kind of 10 minutes a day and learning about it. And that was a huge piece for me that started to just create more stability in my life, even though it didn't once again solve kind of some of these feelings of anxiety or these kind of the clouds of the depression, but it started to help me navigate them and to not kind of fall into the same holes that I was before. I would kind of see them coming a little bit. So that became a consistent practice for me. And I thought, okay, this is a great piece of the puzzle, but I don't kind of feel like I'm thriving at this point by any means. So maybe, I was still leaning towards maybe a medication as kind of just what I needed. And then a friend happened to reach out to my mom with just really anecdotal evidence. She had heard that I had been kind of struggling, and just reached out to share her experience with a dietary intervention for her own PTSD. And now she was quite a bit older than me, but with shared some of her story about just lifelong depression and PTSD, which she had been medicated for since she was a child. And I didn't know that, but she explained to me how a ketogenic diet, which I had no idea what it was at the time, had been a big lever and a big change in her life, and had actually allowed her to come off some of these medications and to really, feel the best that she'd ever felt in her life. I didn't, at the time, I didn't think diet played a huge part in this. I didn't think that was very, it was almost like, not that I rolled my eyes, but I almost, I couldn't accept that was connected in my situation. So I didn't really do anything about that for maybe a year. I think I read a little bit about it, but it always was in the back of my mind as something to maybe try. So I think it was one time, I think I had a late night. I'd been drinking, and I was feeling, I was hungover the next day. I was feeling awful, but it was kind of on top of all the other, just the anxiety and the feelings of depression and the kind of the panicky, just being on the edge. And I thought, well, I should at least try this kind of this diet thing. What do I have to lose, kind of? Yeah. And so I did. I knew nothing about it, but I dove right in, and essentially it's like a kind of a low carb diet, a high fat diet, where you aim to not only cut out a lot of the kind of quotes junk foods and grains, but also you kind of focus on these fats. And the idea is you switch from burning kind of glucose for energy to fat for energy, and it ends up being kind of for a lot of people, kind of a smoother energy. So within kind of a week of doing that, I noticed that I just felt better overall. And it was maybe a 20% improvement. But it was something different than I'd felt in years. I kind of felt a little bit lighter, a little bit more just alive. And I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something to that. So that was about 3 years ago now. And since then, I've kind of just continued to experiment, to dive in, and to learn about this other piece of nutrition as an intervention for mental health, which is still it's almost fringe in some ways, but also is gaining a lot of traction in terms of the research that's starting to be gathered about how these interventions can help with mental health. Yeah. And I would say as I kind of refine that, and it might be different for everybody in terms of what works for them, but I just started to learn how food is information, and if it's bad information, it essentially can inflame our body. It can send us signals that something's wrong, which, if you combine that with some trauma or some unease, can prime the body for this fight or flight response. You can put yourself in the same way that if you drink too much alcohol, the next day you're going to probably have higher anxiety and you're going to overreact to things. Yeah. The food can do that to us, but almost all the time. So if you're constantly in a state of high inflammation, Your brain sometimes can't function in a way that it can, make the judgment calls or react to things in kind of the correct manner. So it's kind of a counterintuitive thing at first, but for me, it started to be just a huge piece of the puzzle, combined with the meditation, combined with other things like exercise and a schedule. And it's continued to be a kind of a really important piece of my kind of just healing, and it's kind of continued to fascinate me. So yeah, I mean, if people want to learn more, I mean, there's like I said, there's not a one size all fits approach, but I would definitely look into something like even, movements like paleo or the Whole30, or just even cutting out the grains and the processed food for a little bit. It can make a big difference. So that was another big piece of the puzzle, which kind of made some room to start exploring some of the other things that I'm interested in life. So
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because you say about inflammation, and I know the consequences of that in the body, and there's so many foods that we might even be allergic to. I mean, did you find that you had any allergies yourself?
Yeah, so that was interesting, and I still haven't done kind of all the tests, but what I started to realize was there were certain things I experimented so many times that I kind of knew I reacted to. So for instance, gluten, I'm not like celiac, but gluten would cause kind of a brain fog almost.
Wow.
And it was pretty repeatable, which was kind of sad because beer's so good. But I started to right. There is, and there's other things. But I started to realize with something like gluten, for instance, that it can 20 minutes later, half an hour later, there'd be this brain fog that would kind of just roll in, and it would negatively kind of impact my mood and just how I felt overall. So yeah, started to identify little things like that definitely had an impact.
It's a lot of self-awareness as well. I just find for somebody sort of so young, I just think you're so self-aware. You've already kind of figured out what that pattern is, because a lot of people that that they'll carry on drinking milk, carry on eating bread, just thinking, oh yeah, I'm getting bloated, or I've got these allergies, it's just part of life. And then they won't even think of actually not drink milk for a few days and see what happens, or not eat bread for a few days, because like you just get stuck in this pattern of behavior, don't you, which is so difficult to get out of. And I think it takes a lot of willpower and discipline to do what you did.
Yeah, 100%. And two things on that. The first is that, I mean, I'm the kind of the exact same as anyone else in it. Like I said, it took me, I liked my Ryan Cokes too much, and my hamburgers and my processed food. So, for a year, I didn't really want to actually try making any changes, but I think if you know better, you can do better. And if you do better and then you feel better, then you can continue to do better. So I'm really big on, I'm always encouraging people to try a dietary intervention just to see how they feel. And I think that's key. If you can start feeling better, then you might be able to stick to something. Whereas if you don't see any results, you can't. So it's definitely, I'm big on the results. And then the other piece of it is just in regard to the diet is, I lost my train of thought there, but you were saying the awareness. Yeah. So on the one hand, you stick to it if it feels better for you. And then on the other hand, if you're interested, I mean, if your motivation, that's what I was going to say. If your motivation is to have less anxiety, to be less depressed, that's a pretty powerful thing. So I mean, I read all kinds of books, I listened to all kinds of podcasts, and it's a pretty strong kind of motivator. So I think if you can almost harness that to say, maybe it's worth cutting out gluten for a month, and then that can be a strong reason to stick to it.
Brilliant. Yeah. So to have that motivation, have that drive, just see your life, without panic attacks and without
Yes.
anxiety. And it is, seeing is believing,
Yeah.
right? It's the manifestation technique. Just manifest it.
Yeah.
And so have you suffered from panic attacks recently then, or anxiety recently?
Yeah. So that's interesting. And two things there. The first is that I think sometimes people can fall into a trap of feeling that we're supposed to never have anxiety, and especially if you've had kind of bad overwhelming anxiety, you can not really know what normal is supposed to be like. So I like to think about it that a certain level is always healthy, and if you've had that experience, those pathways are still there, kind of those neural pathways. You can fall back into those if you don't keep if you don't kind of keep your toolbox close by, if you don't do the things that got you out of that. So for instance, there have been a few times where I can usually kind of track what it was. Not a good night's sleep, eating something I know wasn't good for me, combined with maybe drinking too much, or maybe an argument or something like that in a relationship, and then the next day having all that going on. I would say it doesn't affect me in as bad a way, but I could start to experience that same heightened anxiety, and a few times, it's been like, oh yeah, here comes a panic attack. I know how to get out of this, so it's not as alarming, but it's still not fun, and it's almost just a reminder of you have to do what works for you. So it's interesting because it can, if you kind of it can come back. So I don't think, like you mentioned, healing kind of being this continuous thing, and I don't think people need to be worried about that either, because it doesn't mean that you can't heal, but it just means it really kind of informs you about what direction to move in, what's good for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is, and it's all about improving the quality of life. That's what we want. We want to be growing, we want to be living the healthiest life that we possibly can.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And so would you say your greatest lesson to date then would be what we've just discussed, or if you want to answer that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest lesson would be doing your own research and doing your own experiments. I think sometimes we might think we know, even if we wouldn't word it that way, we might think we know everything already. And so that if you think you know everything and you're stuck, that's not a great place to be. But if you assume that there's other solutions to learn about, and that you have the power to kind of do those experiments yourself, that can really open a lot of doors. So that was a big lesson for me, learning that I could try different things, different approaches, and open new doors.
Yeah, so it's basically not to continue doing what you're doing if you know that you need to heal, or if you know that you need help. So it's about breaking away from those patterns and just challenging yourself, challenging your body. And I know a lot of people feel quite strongly against these keto diets, saying, oh, you can't survive off protein, you'll get ketosis, and we need carbohydrates in our diet. But I guess you don't have to be extreme about it, right? It's just about trying it for a few days and see how you feel. Because I know that a lot of people, as soon as they change their diet and it becomes less carbohydrate loaded, they do start to have a lot more energy, because your body's not having to process all those carbs, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, and it's still kind of controversial at some level, but I encourage people to just at least kind of read about it, and there's stories out there and people sharing their stories of how it's helped them. So it's worth just exploring. No one's twisting your arm, but just know it's an option.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And this is why, again, they have intermittent fasting. That's very popular, and just people fasting, because sometimes it's good for the body to just kind of feel empty, and then obviously to introduce those foods later on in the day, or kind of however you want to do your fasts. However, there's a lot of detox fasts going on at the moment. But I know for me, because I've got low blood pressure, and I've got like low iron levels anyway. Fasting isn't good for me because I get blackouts and I faint. So I have to try and just maintain a healthier diet. So yeah, so see, it's not going to benefit everybody. So yeah, for sure. So okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it will. It will be. Yeah, it will be different.
Yeah, no, I was going to say. So let's just say that somebody is currently suffering from panic attacks. What are the 3 changes that you would recommend that they start as of today?
Yeah. So I would kind of put it into 3 categories, and I would say the one, it doesn't have to be a keto diet, but I would say if you want to see some change, you should really do an experiment. Just do it for a week and really limit, either cut out or limit your alcohol, your caffeine, your sugar, and your processed foods. That really is a big lever to pull. So just even those, that kind of, just focus on some whole foods for a week and take out the stimulants, to let your body just move from that state of alarm. The other piece would be having a bit of a more structured schedule. So go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time. Just build some structure into your life so that you don't have to make as many of these decisions minute to minute, which can cause more anxiety. And I know some people might struggle to sleep or to get up, or that might be an issue, but if you can start building in a routine, even around going to bed, avoiding the screens, kind of having some nice music on, things that calm you down as you go to bed, and then knowing a few things you can do in the morning, a walk, maybe start with a walk first thing. Just have some of these securities built in that you can lean on a little bit. And then the third piece would just be an honest conversation, even if that just starts with a friend. It could be a professional as well, but even if it just starts with a family or friend, just open up the conversation of, oh, I'm kind of struggling right now, I don't understand it, or I'm not sure what's going on. But that's a great place to start, and that those 3 things can kind of open a lot of doors to just moving forward.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think we totally don't even realize that alcohol, even though it is a depressant, it's still classed as a stimulant, right? That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So obviously it's to do with the fact that, your body goes into a different state, from normal to this inhibited state. Even though it is inhibited, it's still kind of, it gives you like a bit of a stimulated effect. Alcohol's always been a strange one. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it can seem to help, right? Like, I know for me, it kind of helps in the moment, right? But the thing is that when our body's often shifting how it feels, it'll feel good for a little bit, and then it'll feel the depressant effect later on. When our body's shifting around into these different kind of modes, that can stimulate the panic and the anxiety. So the idea is to try to create, just for it doesn't have to be for the rest of your life, but just for a little bit, create some these signals of safety where your body is in the same mode, and it can just say, okay, it's we can chill.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like that. So next question, what would you tell somebody who feels stuck in the victim mentality, and what would you tell them to get unstuck?
Yeah, well, I know for a while, even for a few years, I kind of felt that way, that maybe I was dealt a bad hand, and we all have difficult hands in different ways dealt to us, and it's easy to whether it's comparing or just reflecting on what you've been dealt. I think I was studying kind of for a little bit the concept of acceptance and just what that really means, and it's really interesting, because it's never about dismissing what you've gone through, what you're experiencing. It's never about belittling how hard that is or how difficult that is. At the end of the day, it's about, how can I honor myself by doing the best thing that I can do to move forward. And if some of the mindsets or kind of attitudes that I'm clinging to, even if it feels, you might you might be very entitled to hang on to a title. Someone might have done something awful to you, but sometimes holding on to that can inhibit us from moving forward. So just to start to play with that mindset of, are you honoring yourself by giving yourself the best chance to move forward? And at the end of the day, that ends up being switching over from that victim to that that victor, making that transition, that even if you're not there yet, that you're going to honor yourself by giving yourself the best chance. And sometimes that can mean letting go. So that's a tough thing. Like, once again, acceptance, it's not about saying, I accept that it's okay that this happened. It's saying, I accept that I need to work exactly from where I'm at. This is what happened, and I need to do the best thing that I can to move forward.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I love that acceptance. That's a huge thing at the moment. It's kind of accepting where you are, because only from then can you forgive yourself and forgive anybody else, who may have harmed you, and then you can move on. It's about accepting where you are in your life. And I think, there's a lot to be said about that. So next question is, how can we find meaning in our own suffering and experience?
Yeah, I think this is really important. Thing that I kind of stumbled across, which was another important piece. And I think for a lot of people that maybe struggle with some of these issues, whether it's trauma related or more even just, temperament related, whatever it is, I think there's often a kind of a blessing that can come out of what you've been through or what you're going through. And if you can connect with that or identify with that, it can really give you a lot of strength, and down the road it can end up giving you a lot more meaning. So I don't think it's anything to be forced, because a lot of the time, this won't make sense, right? It might not make sense what you went through, but at some point you will, you can either choose to believe, or you will maybe realize that, out of this experience you can maybe help someone else. And just to kind of give an example, there's a man named Nick Vujicic, his name is, and he was born without any arms or any legs, and he speaks all over the world, but he talks about his story and how hard that was, and even trying to end his life, and then he struggled with this, and as he grew up, I think it was maybe he was 12 years or 14, or I forget how old, but he didn't know why would God have made him that way? Why would he have been brought into the world with no arms and no legs? And then he met, people got in touch with him, and he met this little baby that was born the same way he was. And he said in that moment, he knew, why he had gone through that. And it was to support this other person who was going to have to, walk that path, but hopefully with a guide this time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the time what it comes down to is, it can be a difficult thing to accept, but if it can start to be about serving and or bringing more healing to the world, then that can bring some meaning to what you've gone through. So yeah.
Wow, that's just so it's so enlightening to hear you say that, because that's what I've been feeling. Life is about serving. It's about helping others, and about contributing in whichever way we can. And that is the joy, isn't it? That's the art of living. That's the fulfillment that we have. It's not about being selfish for the rest of our lives. It's about serving others. And I really think that you really hit the nail on the head there, when it comes to
Yeah.
this man with it without the arms and legs. You know, what was his ultimate purpose? Well, it was to obviously try and survive and to try and live the best way that he could so that he could help this other being who came into the world. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, just one more quick thing. It's just that idea of the wounded healer, right? That I think is so beautiful. And your podcast is a great example of that, right? That idea that it's sometimes the wounded that can heal. And I think that's the other piece of that meaning, is just reflecting on that.
That's beautiful. That leads me on to my next question. So you sound like you do a lot of reading. So what has been your best book? Or you could have a few best books, but it's just good to obviously get your recommended reading list for my listeners.
Yeah. So kind of the anxiety side of things, there's one that I always recommend. And the author is Dr. Claire Weeks. And the book is called Self-Help for Your Nerves. And it's kind of an older book. So it's kind of funny because the language is a little bit dated in it, but you can look it up on Amazon. I mean, it's got so many 5-star reviews, and it's kind of considered one of the Bibles for understanding anxiety and panic. And when I read that book, it was one of the first things that I really understood kind of what was going on with my thought patterns, with my reactions. Why was I in this kind of habit of anxiety? Because a lot of the times it really becomes a habit. People feel stuck. They feel like they're in this web, and the harder they try to get out, the more tangled they become. So I can't recommend that book enough, just for understanding how to navigate out of that tangle that you can get stuck in. So that's Claire Weeks and Self-Help for Your Nerves. Another book that I would recommend, kind of on the holistic side of things, and once again, I'm just speaking from kind of my experience and what I've done in terms of the kind of the lifestyle and diet changes, but it's called A Mind of Your Own by Dr. Kelly Brogan. And she was a psychiatrist who kind of started exploring some of these lifestyle changes, but directly for mental health. So I just found a lot of value in that, in terms of, if you want to get into a little bit, what are some of these trigger foods, or why would they affect the brain? How does that make sense? It's called A Mind of Your Own, and it just kind of explores some of that stuff. But kind of moving like a little bit past that, I think, and maybe we were getting to this, but I think the final piece of this is kind of just navigating, what is this, how does this affect your life and kind of your story overall, and how do you let this kind of inform you instead of kind of break you down? And there's all kinds of great books about that, but something that I've been delving into more recently is just that idea of sharing what you've been through. So not so much a book, but there's some great resources just on how once you start to heal and share, that can lead to
healing,
a lot more healing.
It is, and that's what you're doing, and that's what I did with my book last year, and it has been
awesome.
the greatest healer. It has been. I feel like, because when you're giving, when you're giving, when it's kind of selfless, it's a selfless act. I just feel that the universe pays you in wonderful ways, and I feel like for us, it's paid us back. It's helped us to heal. So I think there's something to be said about that. Right, so we are nearing the end of our talk. It's been such an honor to have you on, Ben, sharing your light and your wisdom with the world. But I just need to ask you, which I ask majority of my guests, is what has been your biggest regret to date?
Oh, wow. Okay. Biggest regret. I think, and kind of in the context of this podcast too, it was maybe hanging on to the victim mentality a little bit too long, and that can be kind of hard to recognize. But I definitely look at a period where I certainly had reasons to be stuck, but think I was clinging to that, and to maybe create some space, or to explore some of those other ideas earlier on. I wish maybe I would have done that, but that would probably be it.
Yeah, I guess the time came when it had to, right? You had to go
Yeah.
through all those experiences to get to where you are today. So I just feel it's just part of your journey. Embrace it,
Yeah.
right? You're here now. You're here and you're thriving by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So well
For
done.
sure.
And where will we see you next?
Yeah, awesome. So I write a weekly newsletter that I share on my Instagram, and it's out of substack.com, but I could give you the link for that. And I kind of write about this stuff, but also more just generally about how we can get unstuck, how we can leverage our creativity, and even how kind of meaningful projects can be another tool for solving some of these problems in our life. I think sometimes we get too wound up because we're not kind of doing enough, we're not making enough, we're not actualizing our gifts. So I write about that on my newsletter. I have a podcast called Protagonist, where we kind of talk about some of this stuff as well. And yeah, both of those are great places to find me if you want to learn more.
Oh, fantastic. And I will be adding links on the profile of this podcast. So yeah, watch out, guys. And that leads us to the end of our talk. And I hope you have all enjoyed and been inspired by Ben's amazing wisdom. I mean, I am wowed by this man. At the age of just 28, you've come such a long way. And I am so excited for where you are going, because you have the whole world ahead of you. You know, the world is your oyster. You've overcome such a big obstacle of panic attacks and anxiety, and a lot of people, for that is a struggle. So I salute you. Well done, Ben.
Yeah, thanks so much. And even if anyone wants to ever reach out or has questions, more than happy to be. I can link up the Instagram as well, but just happy to answer any questions or anything like that.
Excellent. Okay, so farewell, everybody. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next show.
Take care.